All right, I am going to push us over now. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to give people a few minutes to join and then we will get started. All right, we have a good amount of people joined, so I'm just gonna get started. I'm Erin Lader. I am on the philanthropy team here at ChildFund. I'm gonna get us started with a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into today's program. So, during the webinar, please feel free to interact with others, with us panelists in the chat. But if you do have any questions, you'll see that there is a Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. Please enter your questions there. And at the end, Joan will be fielding any of those questions and giving them to our speakers, Jonathan and Angela. So please feel free to put any questions there, and any we don't get to, we will follow up with after the webinar. So welcome again. Thank you everyone for joining. Today we have some very special guests joining us. Jonathan and Angela Roberts have been donors for over 31 years, and they are going to be telling us a little bit about their journey with ChildFund over that time. We're so excited to have them, and I'm actually going to hand it right over to Joan Lundgren. She's our Director of Corporate and Philanthropy Partnerships, and she will be getting us going. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you, Erin. And thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I know it is a busy time of year, and we really appreciate all of you making the time to join us. And thank you so much to Angela and Jonathan. We're so pleased to have you tonight and celebrate your story. And apologies, because my dog just decided to start growling in the background. As Erin mentioned, Jonathan and Angela have supported ChildFund for over 31 years. They first started sponsoring a child right out of college, and over the years have sponsored 12 children, and also supported several or many community projects. In recent years, they've worked to rehabilitate and rebuild primary schools in Kenya, which have provided thousands of young children safe spaces and new supplies and the things that they need to learn. About a year ago, Jonathan joined our board of directors. So he is now not only giving his giving financially, but also giving of his time and expertise and helping us guide the organization. So again, thank you, Angela and Jonathan, for all you do, and thank you for being here tonight. Before we jump into your ChildFund story, we'd love to hear more about you, about your family, and what inspires you or motivates you to help children who are around the world.
I guess I'll get started. So a little bit about us. Jonathan and I known each other for many years. Before we got married, we went to the same college, and after college we got married, and we have two wonderful boys who are men now. And we are just loving life as Gigi and Papa. We just had our first granddaughter, 4 months old, and we were overjoyed with her joining our family. So I guess that's anything else you want to know?
Yeah, it's you talk about the boys, the young men, and the youngest one's bigger than me, and he's still her baby. So I tell you, and how much fun we have as a family. We get together. But the second part of your question, Joan, was about like what drew us to ChildFund as young donors. And I just started working. Angela was still in college, and didn't make very much. Didn't have very much. I think I was making $23,000 a year. but we wanted to make a difference. And one of the things that appealed to us about the organization at the time was you could have a big impact in a child's life, a family's life, for a very small amount of money. I think it was $9 a month was our first sponsorship.
Mm.
And so did a lot of research. Even back then, I was a little bit nerdy and didn't have the internet, but I knew enough to find out that Child Fund was rated really highly for passing dollars through into the programs and actually into the impact. So less administrative cost. So our $9 a month, most of that was showing up where we were told it was showing up, and we got back a lot of feedback and a lot of proof points for that. It felt really good. So that's what kind of drew us to engage when we did in the mid 90s as sponsors.
Oh, that's wonderful. And congratulations on your granddaughter. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So when you first started, it must have been Christian Children's Fund.
Yes.
It was.
And yeah, that's amazing. And was your first sponsored child in Kenya? Did you choose Kenya as a place?
We did. His name was Philip Wanzia. It was our first child.
Yeah,
Oh,
we think we got him at 6 and tracked him. He actually was allowed to stay in the program a little bit longer because of his family situation. He is a young man now, I think in his late 30s, but he is um, a I believe he's a police officer in Nairobi. But we
oh
didn't
wow.
choose Kenya. Kenya kind of chose us. We just got a
Okay.
child. But after that, all of the subsequent projects and children that we did, we asked to be directed in that same community.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, tell me a little bit how that experience of child sponsorship, how that has impacted you personally, and if you have any stories similar to your first one about the children you've sponsored along the way.
You can go first.
So yeah, it absolutely had an impact. When you sponsor a child, and I know I can't chat back, but I did see a message popped up. There's another sponsor on the line, so there's some folks listening that know good and well what it feels like to get communications back directly from the child that you're sponsoring. And if they're too young to write, someone writes in their behalf, and you'll find out what their favorite things to do are, or what they like, and oftentimes that person who's representing them is an older sibling or in some cases a teacher, and in a lot of cases a parent or grandparent. And so you get all these different views of what's happening in your child's life. And there's enough communication coming that you hear some of the good and the bad. Like when there are drought conditions and in our particular community, when things are good. When a project's landed, when a gift showed up. So it's really, and when they're hitting their milestones, and it might be, they did really well on the end of year school exams or what have you. They might have been welcoming a new sibling to the family, but you really feel connected.
Yeah, I agree with all that. That the best part of that is, being able to feel like you're part of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you involve your sons in your sponsorship experiences?
So as they got older, we would let them know that there's something that the community needs, and if they're interested in giving an extra gift from their fund or their allowance or whatever. So we did give them the opportunity to do that.
Yep. One Christmas in particular, they gave quite a bit. They're both still, they weren't adults yet, and they wanted to. But largely, it's been more recent that we've told people about what we do. It was just kind of our thing. We just did it. We didn't do it to boast or to, hey, look at us, or we just did it. And then
Hmm.
as we started giving more, as our means and our personal situation changed, we felt moved. We felt compelled to have a bigger impact. And at that point, we really didn't talk about it because, when you're talking to friends or family and you say, we built a school, it sounds crazy. But in reality, it's like, well, I could buy a Harley, which is going to do no good and maybe do bad.
Yes, it could be
Um,
dangerous.
or we can completely rehab a school in this community that's going to impact hundreds of children and families because they use it as a community center and not just for a year or two, but for a generation. So that's kind of how we have thought about it.
And tell me a little bit more about how that transition from sponsoring children to then being inspired to rebuild schools? Did that come from a specific need or a specific, did one of the children that you support, were they in a specific situation that you were responding to?
Well, as our means got better, we inquired about other projects for the community that was needed. So that's kind of how we really got into it at the beginning. Um, but it was always in the community where we were sponsoring the children. So we kind of knew what they were up against, what the community was up against. And so that kind of drew us to say, well, maybe we can, make a difference in that in the school or in the water program as well as sponsoring the child. So that's kind of how we transitioned to
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was water. Our
Yeah.
first one, if you
Oh,
remember, it
yeah.
was I got an annual bonus the first time. I made officer at my company and got an annual bonus. I'm like, well, we should do something,
Yeah.
charitable with some of this. And we called and were advised, don't give it to your sponsored family or child. That can be ruinous. Like if you give too much, it can be actually be a problem. But if you want to impact them and their community, here's some things you can do. You can buy livestock, you can buy supplies, you can buy um, crop for them to plant and tend. You can, and what we did, we built a water weir,
Mhm.
and I think it was probably late 1990s, early 2000s, and I think it was like $1,000, maybe two, but it
mm,
provided like 20 years worth of water was the idea, and we've been seeing Philip write about the crops being impacted by
That's
the
right.
drought,
Yeah.
and so
oh, that's
it
amazing.
was a great recommendation. We were able to do it, and then seeing the impact that it had,
Yeah.
wanted to keep doing those things.
Yeah, we talk a lot about sustainable change, and that's a great example. Both that and classrooms and schools are gifts and support that endures over years and even decades. So I really want to hear about your trip to Kenya last year. We were talking before this. It was your first time to Africa and your first time in Kenya. Tell me about how that trip came about.
Oh, you start.
So the trip came about. It was kind of a intersection of different variables. I had an opportunity for work to travel to Kenya, and it was optional, but we were able, like, hey, we're going to be in Kenya. We can maybe actually go see our project. The Child Fund, our philanthropic advisor, been encouraging us to go for a long time, and actually made a trip on our behalf and come back with pictures and stories, and so it kind of things lined up. We went on this trip for business for the first part, and then we extended personally in Nairobi for a couple of days, and we met with the Child Fund org in Nairobi, and then they took us out into Machakos County, which was a long drive. Went out into a rural community
Yeah.
and visited.
It was the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's great.
No, yeah.
Angela, I can tell on your face. I can tell from your face how how
Yeah.
impactful it was.
It was a trip of a lifetime for us, for me personally. I felt overwhelmed actually, with joy, not in a positive way.
Yeah.
And when I talk about it, when I just remember seeing the faces of our sponsors, because it was kind of a two-part. We were able to see some of the communities and the schools that we were able to help build, and meeting the children there, and their parents came as well, and school administrators and the people that actually take the funds that we give and distribute them and how that works. So we got to learn a lot about the process, like being there, and I was like, so cool. And then after that, we got to meet. I know I'm excited.
Yeah.
We got to meet our sponsored children, and that was
That was it.
amazing. And I don't know. I can go
Like a
on.
crescendo, like
Please
you can't
do.
get any
Yeah.
better. But when we first got there, we saw some of the projects that we had been able to complete. It's really cool because we weren't always in a position to do a whole project, and we wanted to. So we're like, well, what school can we partially rehab, or how can we contribute? And then there, we were introduced to, not literally, but through our advisor, who is kind of going back and forth between us and another family who was in a similar situation. They weren't ready to commit to doing a whole school, so we went in together and did a school. And like we're getting to see like the evidence of some of these things, but then you also saw the before, and you saw the ones that aren't done yet, and you're like, whoa. These kids are showing up, and this is their classroom. This is where they spend the day. These are their conditions. And here's over here an example of something that was done and had impact. And so it really, really solidifies the importance of what you do at Child Fund, Joan and your colleagues, and what sponsors are able to help affect and how it makes a difference. We had teachers that were like literally crying.
Made me cry.
And then to go and see the children. And we got to see them in real life. Some of the pictures are pretty old, so it's a bit of a shock, like, whoa, to see them change. And their families came. The ones that couldn't attend, there were two of the young men, boys that they're graduating from the program, and so they've gone off to go to prep school and they couldn't make it. And one of them had their mother lived in Nairobi, and because she moved there when he got into school, and she walked and rode the bus out into this rural Machakos County. It took hours, and then she sat and waited for us to show up because the tour was slow. We didn't get there like I think when we had originally told them, and we showed up, and they were just happy to meet us and to tell their stories and to say thank you. And that was so enriching for us to hear what they wanted to do and the hope that they have and how much they get and how much they do with so little in the way of resources. It's humbling to see, but it's also inspiring.
Yeah.
My favorite part was comparing their photos when we first started sponsoring them to what they are now. They're preteens or teenagers, and to try and say, oh, that's what you look like when you and now you're so grown up, and it's super special just to hug them and touch them and all the things we've been reading about that they've been doing in their lives. It was amazing.
We met one young man just quickly, Joan, to finish this question, but he had been to prep school, but he was able to come back and meet us. And he was pretty young when we started sponsoring him. He's going to aviation school.
Wow.
And like literally to qualify to be on the program in this community, you have to be at a certain level of poverty that it's hard to even comprehend here. Like, literally, single room dirt floor, maybe corrugated metal roof, and you're planting crop and harvesting a couple of livestock to get by. And here he is. And it's one that was going to be a nurse, one that was going to aviation school, one that was two that were going to be masons, one that wanted to be a bartender and was going to mixology school. But they're livelihoods that they're creating for themselves. They'll be able to sustain themselves, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you all did that. I mean, because of you all did that.
Well, thank you for what you have done for just getting the kids in the communities what they need. We really appreciate that.
Well, it's a partnership, right?
Yes.
We all play a part. I had a similar experience. They weren't children that I sponsor, but I was in Indonesia with Child Fund last month, and did a site visit. We were visiting a program and learning about it. And three formerly sponsored children came and spoke to us, and they were all, one was still in school, but the other two had graduated and were working. One was teaching physics. And all of them knew the names and cities in the US where their sponsors were. That's how much impact these individuals have had on them. And it was the most moving experience to have conversations with them and hear about their lives and how they were changed. So similar to yours. Was there, you've already talked about some moments, but were there any other moments in the trip that really stuck with you or surprised you, maybe?
Yeah, we were a little bit overwhelmed with the reception. Like we went to one kind of school campus. I say school campus, meaning there may be 3 single room classrooms and some cleared area of like no brush. It was not concrete, not roads, but just an area.
And
there was a tent set up, and there were a lot of people around, like the whole community. Even there were two constables, or like they were in military kind of parade uniforms because they were from the government. No weapons, but just they're in uniform. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? We like, hey, this is a good day. We timed it up. We're gonna.
Yeah.
They came to see us, and it was a little overwhelming to think that it was meaningful enough for them to meet us because of the school projects that they showed up the way they did. But even just the individual sponsorship engagement when we got that, the gratitude for the help that they get, they really appreciate. They know we don't like. It's hard to describe. They don't have any like illusion or delusion about what life is like in America. I mean, I think it's 2025 and it's pretty easy to see, but they're grateful that people here and around the world are stopping and taking a moment to think about people with less resources and helping them. And there's a lot of gratitude for that.
I was just wanted to mention one thing that stood out when we visited one of the communities is we met um, a woman who remembers us when we first started. She was a teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And she came, she's in her 80s now.
Yeah, it had to be in her 80s, maybe 90s.
The sweetest. She came up to me and thanked me. And I was like, no, thank you. You've been part of this program with helping these kids, these children get to where they are. And it was very touching to see her out there with us.
Yeah, they had a moment and we're together for a while. It was to watch them. I didn't know what was going on, but just to see them, I could tell it was.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Wonderful. Jonathan, I think it was about a year and a half ago. I remember Jennifer DeWall, who I can tell by the chat, a lot of people on the call know. I know Jennifer. But you all had dinner with Jennifer and our CEO, Isam. And that was the first time I think that the idea of you getting more involved and joining our board came up. Can you talk about that? Kind of not so much the process, but what's inspired you or motivated you to get more involved with ChildFund, and joining the board is a big step. It's a big responsibility and it's a lot of time. We've sat in some committee meetings together, so I know. But tell us a little bit about that decision.
So I think to do it justice, I do have to talk a little bit about the process because I want to give a fully transparent answer. And so there's a little bit of context here that's important. Because we've been sponsors for a long time, when we ran into a couple of speed bumps with our process, we didn't just go away. We made some calls and we found out that, hey, there's some transition occurring and a couple systems changed and hang in there. And we did. And without really knowing much about me, I don't think, we got a phone call from the new CEO, Isam, and he said, hey, thank you for all of your support. And, we've had an unfortunate situation. It was minor, but it was something that, a lot of people maybe wouldn't have stuck with. And he said, thank you. And he said, here's my vision for the organization. And, if I ever have the chance to meet you, if we're ever in the same place, please let me know. I'd love to. And don't you know, like a year later, he calls and says, hey, I'm going to be in your area and I'd love to meet you. And I don't think he knew, maybe he did some research, but I don't think he knew like what we did. He just knew, or what I did. He just knew that I was a sponsor, not that I was a CEO or a banker. I think that was a little bit more of a surprise later. So we met and we had lunch. And, I think there's three ways that people can give. We can give our time, we can give our talents and experience, and we can give our treasure. And we had always given what we could financially, our treasure, but hadn't for ChildFund done anything else. And so when he asked if there'd be an interest to have an impact in a different way, we talked about it and it seemed like a no-brainer. So it's an honor to have been invited. It kind of was accidental because of his outreach, I would say. And it's been very rewarding because you have a chance to, as a longtime sponsor, add context, to understand the mission a little bit more and to feel like you're contributing.
Yeah. And then I think the exciting, or maybe not exciting, but I think the we're so grateful because as a board member, you are not only giving your time and expertise, but you're helping build that vision. You're helping to contribute to that vision for many years to come. And we've we've just recently had an event with board alumni, and it's really interesting to hear about Child Fund, you know, how it's changed over the years, but really how it continues to grow towards this common vision. We want to do more for children who are in crisis, who are in need around the world. And we just keep growing and pushing and pushing. So it's really, we're so thrilled to have your support and your perspective and your experience and be a part of that.
Thank you. It's an honor.
So one last question from me, and I encourage if anyone's on the line to put your questions in the Q&A. I will check the chat in just a second because I see 13 messages there. I'm not sure if there are any questions in there, but looking back, what would you say to someone who's just starting with child sponsorship or with Child Fund generally? And what if someone who wants to do more, what would be your recommendations?
Well, I think first thing I'd say is thank you and congratulations because you're doing something. And I think that for us, that is what it was. It's like we wanted to do, we felt that an action's better than an intention. Intentions are good, but they don't always pan out. And if you're on the other end waiting for that, you're just waiting and you have nothing. But if you actually have something come through in the way of a gift or sponsorship or a donation, a program, it has impact. So action.
And Jonathan was telling me this one story that really hit home, and I'm probably not going to do it justice, but it starts with a grown up and a child walking on a beach, and they see all these starfish that have been beached, and the child is picking the starfish up and putting it back in the water, and just keeps doing that as they walk. And the grown up says to the child, "What are you doing? You're not going to be able to make a difference with all the starfish that have already been beached." And the child picks up the starfish and puts it in the ocean and says, "I just made a difference to that one."
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful story. That is a perfect story about how we can make a difference. With whether it's one child, one community, all of us pitching in can really make change. So I gonna check one more time. No questions from the audience, but a lot of thank yous and congratulations and excitement. And for those of you who might not be following the chat, we have posted some videos from Angela and Jonathan's trip last year. They graciously let us put some postings on our YouTube channel and I think Instagram and other social media. So there are links in the chat if you want to see some fun videos. I do want to end by again saying thank you so much. This is what we wanted. We wanted to hear an inspiring celebratory story at this year end and this season. A story that just exemplifies what one family can do. As you said, I think you have helped so many children in Kenya, and now with your contributions on the board, you're helping millions more, literally. So this is just amazing. We thank you so much. To everyone who is attending, thank you. I see some familiar names. I know a lot of you join all of our webinars, and we are so grateful. This is our last one of 2025, but we will be doing more in 2026. So keep an eye out for some invitations. I want to also thank you all, for everyone who's attending tonight, for your support. I know you are all donors, sponsors. You do so much for Child Fund. Frankly, this has been a hard year for children around the world. For those of you who joined our last webinar, you heard a lot about more children being in crisis, more children being caught in conflict. And so if there was ever a time to stretch, this is it. If you would like to make a year-end gift, I do encourage you to reach out to your philanthropic advisor or the email that's on the screen. And another thing that everyone can do is do what Jonathan and Angela did and today and tell your story. We love it when we hear people share their stories of sponsorship, their stories of giving, and how it's impacted their lives. Um, we are more than happy to help you do that. So do let us know if we can do anything. But again, we are so grateful for all of our supporters. It really takes, there's so many thousands of people that make Child Fund work and that further our mission to help children all over the world. And we are so grateful for that. So with that, I'm going to close and wish everyone happy holidays, happy new year, and we look forward to seeing you in 2026. Thank you
Thank
so much. And
Everyone.
thank you again, Jonathan and
Happy
Angela.
holidays.
you.
Happy holidays.